Welcome back to Active Learning, from Introduction to Implementation. We hope you're enjoying the course so far, and we look forward to seeing what you're going to come up with next. Now that you've explored some different active learning strategies and their benefits, let's consider how to use one of those strategies to create a rich learning activity within your teaching and learning context. Our goals for this module are that by the end of it, you will successfully be able to first describe how an active learning activity can be used to meet your instructional goals, and next, to describe the application of an active learning strategy within a specific context, including, again, those instructional goals, the teacher activities, and the learner activities. As you move toward designing your own active learning activity, the principle of alignment will be a useful design guide. When three areas are well aligned, it's proven to support learners and support effective learning. Those three areas are, first, instructional goals, referred to in this visual as learning goals or learning objectives. Second, teaching and learning activities. And third, feedback and assessment. While we won't design or develop assessments here, our interest is to make sure instructional goals are measurable so assessments can be built on, to observe what learners know, what skills they have, or what they care about. The emphasis here will be on considering how the active learning activity can be designed to fit or align with instructional goals. A plan for an active learning activity, then, will help ensure alignment with the instructional goals. In the context of these goals, you want to consider the interests and the abilities of your learners, what the learners will do, the resources and materials required, and what the teacher will do. Previously we discussed, let me move this out of the way again. Here we go. Previously we discussed how Muddiest Point can be used in a teaching and learning context where a new skill was being demonstrated. As another example of applying this active learning strategy, Muddiest Point could also be used, for example, in the context of a meeting where Gantt charts are being introduced to a team. Maybe this team is working on a project together. Let's imagine that the instructional goal is to be able to read a Gantt chart so they can provide feedback on the Gantt chart prepared for the project. And let's look at how Muddiest Point can help those learners to be able to read the Gantt chart. In the meeting where the Gantt chart is being shared, learners might have a sense of how projects are typically organized or scheduled, but they might otherwise be unfamiliar with Gantt charts specifically as a project scheduling and organizational tool. The teacher might have an image of the chart on the screen, might have some text, and make some comments explaining it. And once the chart's presented, the teacher could then ask the learners, those in the meeting, about their muddiest point, something that's unclear on the chart. The learners might be given some time to think about it. They might write down ideas. Ideas could even be written on sticky notes and placed in a central location so everyone can see all of the different things people are still unclear about. If the Gantt chart for the project was complex, a simplified example might be used as a starting point to first discuss and allow learners to explore the idea of Gantt charts before considering their own project in its context. Either way, the use of this Muddiest Point strategy gives both the learners and the teacher some feedback about how the learners are doing reading these charts, how well they're able to interpret them, so they can move effectively toward meeting the instructional goal of having learners provide feedback on a Gantt chart for the project they're considering. In the first lesson, we also looked at Think, Pair, Share. We looked at it in the context of learners discussing a new process or a new resource, such as the findings of a report, for example. It could also be used as a debriefing activity, such as in a meeting after an event with all the volunteers from the event to celebrate the event's success and discuss how it went. Let's assume here the goal is to note and document 5 effective elements of the event, so those can be built upon in future events. Let's look at how Think, Pair, Share can help learners recall the effective elements of the event. Those involved could be asked what went well and given time to reflect on their experience. Then they discuss their experience with a peer before sharing their ideas with the whole group of volunteers. This is a great opportunity to celebrate everything the volunteers were interested in from their personal experience with their event. Since the instructional goal is to help learners recall effective elements of the event, then the Think, Pair, Share aligns well in a couple ways. First, the peer-to-peer sharing helps individuals remember the details. And second, the sharing collectively helps gain a diverse view of what made the event effective. From a teaching perspective, this activity actually requires very little preparation, very few resources. It's just about bringing people together and asking that question to get them thinking first so they can pair and share. Case studies, conversely, require some careful preparation. They work well, though, in all kinds of contexts. Previously, we considered the example of a case study being used about change management with a group of leaders. Another example of a use for case studies might be individuals preparing for field work, needing to learn about wildfire safety and fire suppression. Let's imagine these learners are creating a basic wildfire safety course, and when they're going to be working in remote areas, and they may be called on to assist in a fire suppression effort. So as a starting point, they need to be able to explain 3 common techniques for fire suppression and 3 common ways wildfires spread. Let's look at how the case studies could fit that instructional goal in that instructional context. As the learners learn about fire behavior, cases of recent wildfire events could be shared with small groups. Each group of learners could be tasked with reading the case together and preparing to share about what the case demonstrates, again, about fire behavior and effective fire suppression techniques. They might be expected to make some notes along the way and use those as talking points when their time comes to share with the group. In this case, the teacher selects the cases that include details within the scope of knowledge the learners are working with that would be relevant and that would be effectively understood by those learners at that time. While the groups are sharing, after they've reviewed the case, the teacher would make sure that key details of each case are presented. And they might even ask some probing questions of the entire group to make sure others understand the cases completely. The teacher might also follow presentations of groups by asking other learners outside that group about the key details to check the understanding of everyone in the room and make sure everyone's understanding kind of those key areas of fire suppression techniques and ways wildfire spread. As learners are introduced to more and more cases, the teacher could be checking in. It could be, again, re-explaining the common ways fires spread and the common suppression techniques, all meeting that instructional goal we had. As different cases are seen and again, those things will become clearer and clearer for the learners. In this lesson, we revisited our 3 examples of active learning strategies and talked about some specific activities. Our interest was in designing and developing activities for our own teaching and learning context. Design considerations that we focused on included alignment with the instructional goals and what learners might be expected to know, do, or care about. Considerations for development included what the teachers and their learners might do before, during, and after the activity to make the most of it. Thanks for engaging in the lesson. Here's a list of the references used in this presentation.